Welcome on in, members of the chapter, as well as potential new initiates. This is Spruce and Studs, and this is going to be a monster review. So the first thing that we're going to be talking about is the box size of Horus. And I'll have to say, the box is absolutely massive, as you can see right here. And then, obviously, you don't really have a frame of reference. So I'm going to let you see the box of Rogel Dorn, and we're going to put it in front of Horus's box, and Horus's box is absolutely massive compared to Dorn's box. So that's the first comparison. And I can say that for a fact that Horus is going to come in the premium packaging, where Horus is going to be surrounded by nice fluffy styrofoam and then have a plastic covering to kind of close everything up and a plastic sheet to prevent things from rubbing together. So let's just get right to the unboxing. Let's get this plastic wrapping right off. Side one, and then side two. I can smell the heresy from here. So as predicted, there is a hard plastic covering here. And then there's a soft plastic covering right here. And then lo and behold, we have the Primarch himself. I apologize, but before we get started with this review, I just want to shout out David Toys. The reason why I want to shout out David Toys is because that is where I get all of my action figures. They have very quick, lightning fast shipping, anywhere between 4 to 12 days to arrive from China all the way to the United States, all for free. And for example, I got this mountain of a man delivered at my doorstep in just 5 days, which is pretty amazing. So if you're interested in getting any action figure, especially Horus, please click in the link in the description below, or you will be brought to David Toys. And before you check out, folks, do not forget to use the code SNS for 12% off of your purchase, because we need to keep the money where it belongs, which is in your pocket. And without further ado, let's get into the review. All right, folks, it is definitely time to review this beast of a man. And I'll have to say that just lifting up this action figure, there is a significant heft, a significant bulk to him. If weight was a value, then you definitely know that this action figure is well worth the money. But regardless, let's just dive in the details, and we are going to be starting off with the top of this action figure. This wolf pelt has highlights on the topped raised areas of the fur, which is fantastic. So you've got the face of the wolf here, complete with some very wicked looking fangs. The wolf's claw that is dangling down right here on the War Master's pauldron, and then there is an amulet that also is dangling down too. The back end of this wolf's pelt, there is a bunch of skulls as well as shrunken heads. I mean, these heads are actually very, very detailed as well. I like how there's color differences too. This one has a sickly green kind of tone, and this has plenty of shading that's happening with the inner recesses, especially around the nose and the eye area. This particular skull has a bunch of twine that is lashed around it to keep it in place. And then on the back of the wolf's pelt, there are more of these skulls. These kind of remind me of like voodoo doll heads or shrunken heads. And this head is actually pretty cool looking too, because it's got like a piece of his spine attached. So lots of detail to take in. And then up top, there appears to be some sort of instrument cluster over here. It has a nice metallic red color. And unfortunately, look at this. The spike over here, I received it from the vendor this way. It's not really a big deal because I can just super glue it, but it kind of is a disappointment because, well, you kind of spend a large sum of money. You want your action figures to be pristine. Let's look at Horus's very, very detailed face. Looks like he has a bunch of pipes and hoses that are running into his head. I like how there is scar tissue where the pipes are running in, and there is a darker shade around the scar tissue here. Get to see some veins and blood vessels that are here. The eyes are screened on pretty nicely. He's looking straight ahead, no issues whatsoever. And then he's got a mass of wires that are sticking into his ear area as well as his jawline. He's got a very menacing sneer, but I'll have to say, weirdly enough, the face doesn't really have too much shading. So as we are taking a look at the serpent scales, especially the pauldron area, I'll have to push this area aside, and it looks like you can actually reveal the pauldron a little bit more through this kind of mechanism. It looks like the wolf's head is attached by a ball and socket joint, and there's kind of like a joint over here that you can flex. This is the Sons of Horus symbol right here, and then this is decorated with so much texture here. None of this is screened on, and as we look on the fringe of the pauldron, they have leather like straps here, and each of these straps have these nice studs which really accent this action figure. And this pauldron has a pendant right here as well. Let's take a look at the other side, and you can also lift the tail portion of the wolf's pelt up so you can reveal more of the left pauldron, and the left pauldron does not seem to be as decorated as the right hand side. So as we are taking a look at the middle of the serpent scales, there are sigils here that decorate the face of Horus's breastplate, and I love the three-tailed wolves that are here. There is a lot of care and detail and design right here. However, there doesn't seem to be any shading with the wolf's fur. There also doesn't seem to be any kind of shading or highlighting here with these metal coils as well. And then moving on down, we have a very, very prominent blazing eye that kind of reminds me of the Eye of Sauron. So there are flames up here, and attached to this belt, more skulls. This skull actually has a ton of shading, which I really like to see. Another shrunken head type of skull right here. And then moving on down with the loincloth area, yet another very menacing looking eye. And just like with the pauldron, you get a bunch of leather fringe with these stud accents. Taking a look at the legs of this action figure, there is so much detail that you can absorb through it. This is obviously a lot more detailed than a 40K action figure. So up here, there's a bunch of studs here that kind of break up the monotony of just a smooth piece of armor. Lots of gold inlaying as well as just decorations here. I love all the spikes that are on the serpent scales. And there's also these runes that are happening too. And the runes are highlighted a nice white to help them jump out a little bit more. This particular leg has a very, very menacing eye here, which lots of flames and some teeth that are happening with it. Let's take a look at the backside of Horus. There is a massive flowing cape that, once again, JoyToy knocked it out of the park with all the shading that's in the deeper recesses here. There's also some battle damage here with the cape. You can see some holes right here and over here. There is gold embroidery that's happening on the outside of it with different runic symbols. And there's a very large Sons of Horus symbol smack dab right in the center here. And the inner part of the cape is equally as gorgeous as the back of the cape. And while we're taking a look at the back of Horus, let's see what's going on with his special Terminator armor. So instead of the 40K vents, you have the 30K fans right here. This is probably some sort of power generator, I'm going to be assuming. It's nice to see that this has got like a tiered kind of system. It's not just one smooth plate. And within the highest edges here, you also get to see some nice white highlighting to make the black of the armor stand out. And so now let's talk about the War Master's armaments, starting off with the fabled War Master's Talon. So the War Master's Talon is pretty badass in my opinion. It actually does supersede Ezekiel Abaddon's Talon, and you can see how wicked looking this thing is. It's got these tiny barbs that are up top, and each and every single one of these claws are a dark gunmetal color that's been highlighted up with a dry brushed silver. And here is the twin linked bolter, and you can see with the twin linked bolter there are bolt rounds that are hanging outside of this thing, and the bolt rounds are made of a soft and flexible plastic, as you can see. And at the base of the talon, there is a wicked, well, another talon that is sticking out. And hanging down the War Master's belt is a knife, and the scabbard has a lot of detail in it. And this knife is actually functional in that you can actually pull it out of its sheath right here. And this is what the knife looks like. It's a wicked curved blade. And now, let's take a look at the gigantic mace. Worldbreaker, I'll be honest with you, kind of is, well, a plain looking gigantic mace. The size is very, very impressive, don't get me wrong, but the level of detail on here is kind of flat in my opinion, just because, well, there really isn't any kind of shading in these gold slash bronzish kind of parts. But obviously there's only actually 3 colors here, which is the gold, the gunmetal, and the dry brushed silver onto the gunmetal. But at least with this mace, there is plenty of detail with the spikes. Aside from that, the only things that you get with this action figure is a closed clenched fist right here. And the other one, you get an opened kind of clawed hand right here. So the next thing that we're going to do is talk about the articulation of this action figure, starting off with Horus's head. So Horus's head actually isn't very articulatable, if that's actually a word. You can't really move it around too much. The reason why is because he's got so many of these hoses attached that he has a very limited amount of movement. So I believe this is the amount of movement that you can have for his head looking this way. And then you're very limited to what you can do this way. And as I had highlighted to you earlier, you can move the head of the pelt up and down like this. And same thing with this. You can move this area up and down. So let's take a look at the movement of the pauldron. The pauldron does mimic the new pauldrons of the Deathwing Terminators for 40K. So what I mean by that is it's got this ball and socket joint here. So it allows for actually a lot more stability and movement, in my opinion. So you can move the pauldron around like this. Strangely enough, you can get 360 degrees of rotation despite the bulk of this action figure around the shoulder joint. Like I said, it's very surprising to me. And in terms of lateral movement, this is as far as you can move in Horus's arm, and this is just about as far as you can move it out. So that actually is a pretty solid 90 degrees of motion right here. And about this joint, you can rotate it 360 degrees. It's nice to see. There's also a double jointed elbow, so lots of motion about the arms on War Master's talon. As I had alluded to before, this talon is better than Abaddon's because this has full articulation here. Each and every single one of these areas on the fingers can be moved in and out. There is a ball and socket joint on each and every single one of these fingers. So there is a great deal of movement and motion that you can achieve with every single one of these fingers. The motion about the upper chest and the torso area is slightly restricted just because of this area right here. So with Horus's legs, you can kick the leg back up here. You could probably get almost 360 degrees of motion, and you can kick it out front like this. And actually, yes, you can get 360 degrees of motion, which is very surprising for something this bulky. About the knee area, this is the maximum extension, but you can push the knee area back like this. There is a wobble motion that you can achieve on the ankle. Just like with any other JoyToy action figure, you can push this area up and push it down for better posability and stability. And that is the motion of Horus. And now I'm going to get to everybody's favorite on this channel, which is a size comparison. And so the first action figure that I'm going to put on top of Horus is going to be his brother, Mr. Rogel Dorn. And removing the ornate eagle as well as the backpack, you can tell that Dorn still comes up short compared to his brother. And I would say that the War Master is about a full head taller than Dorn. And the next person I'm going to compare Horus next to is his right-hand man, Mr. Abaddon. So looking at Abaddon, he is way dwarfed compared to his chaos-infused master. He literally comes up to Horus's chest. The last thing I'm going to compare Horus to is a regular Warhammer 40k Primarch Marine. So this is your regular Marine. He comes up to basically Horus's waist, and that is it. And so I hope you enjoyed the in-depth review, the motion on Abaddon, as well as the very short size comparison. Now it's time to wrap this review up. Well, folks, would it be presumptive to say that this could potentially be the action figure of the year? I don't think I'm going to be wrong in that aspect. Why do I believe that? Well, the results are actually very obvious. I am very, very impressed with what we got here with JoyToy. They have definitely taken the action figure and literally ascended it to this phenomenal level of detail and quality that you typically don't get to see in things that are called action figures. I mean, the wolf's pelt is absolutely phenomenal. It's got so much highlighting and detail. I also love those shrunken voodoo heads that are hanging down. The War Master's Talon is a very menacing weapon that I love just because it's got full articulation of the fingers. And I suppose World Breaker is maybe a very small disappointment just because I would have at least liked to see a little bit more of some color, but that's not really that big of a deal. The armor is just absolutely insane looking. It's got so many details with the spikes, the studs, the knobs. This action figure is just exuding with so much detail. And I'll have to say, when I was moving this action figure around with the B-reel, he is very, very top heavy, so it's a little bit unsteady in terms of the posing. So you have to be careful not to knock him over just because of the amount of weight that he's literally bearing on his shoulders. This is definitely a must-buy for every single Warhammer 40k fan. These JoyToy action figures are something truly special to behold. Thank you, members of the chapter, for joining me in this review. I am very, very appreciative of all the support that I've been getting in the terms of your subscriptions, likes, as well as comments that you leave in the comments section. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.